Kira sat at her desk, her fingers moving swiftly over the keyboard as she finalized another report. 25 years in this office, 25 years of dedication, overtime, and unwavering loyalty. She had seen employees come and go, but she remained the steady foundation of the company. She had mentored countless juniors, handled the toughest clients, and solved problems no one else could. And yet, none of that mattered when she was called into the conference room that morning. Emma, her boss, sat across from her, arms crossed, her sharp gaze cold and indifferent. "Kira, after 25 years, we have to fire you," she announced, her voice laced with arrogance. There was no preamble, no gratitude, just a blunt dismissal. "Vacate the workplace before Friday." The words should have stung, should have left her reeling. But Kira merely blinked, her face void of emotion. A pause hung in the air, stretching awkwardly. Emma expected a reaction, shock, disbelief, perhaps even tears. The HR manager shifted in his seat, waiting for Kira to plead, to beg for reconsideration. But Kira did neither. She looked Emma in the eye, her voice steady. "Okay." A flicker of confusion crossed Emma's face. The response was too simple, too calm. "That's it?" Emma scoffed, her brow raising. She had expected resistance, maybe even rage, but this unsettled her. Kira rose from her chair, collected her pen, and slid her notepad into her bag. She didn't look defeated. If anything, she looked indifferent. It was as if she had already known this day would come. Her silence was deafening. The room, once charged with authority, now felt oddly powerless. Emma shifted uncomfortably, clearing her throat. "Well, then. HR will process your paperwork. Make sure everything is wrapped up before you leave." Kira nodded once and turned, exiting the room without another word. As she walked back to her desk, she could feel the eyes of her coworkers on her. Some glanced at her with pity, others with curiosity. But no one spoke. They were waiting for her to break. But Kira wasn't broken. If anything, she felt lighter. Because she knew something they didn't, this company had relied on her more than they realized. And soon enough, they would feel the weight of her absence in ways they never expected. Kira sat at her desk, staring at the cardboard box she had just placed on the table. The same desk she had spent over 2 decades at, the same chair she had sat in through countless late nights, trying to meet deadlines others had abandoned. With a deep breath, she started packing, her neatly stacked files, the framed picture of her parents who had once been so proud of her career, the small potted plant she had nurtured for years. Each item she placed into the box carried a memory, a piece of her dedication that had been so easily discarded. As she picked up an old employee appreciation plaque, she scoffed at the irony. "For outstanding dedication and service," it read. Yet today, her service had meant nothing. She had trained employees who had risen above her, watched fresh graduates she had mentored become managers while she remained in the same position. Promotions had always gone to someone else, but she had told herself it was fine, hard work was its own reward. But standing here now, realizing she had given more than 2 decades of her life to a company that hadn't hesitated to throw her out, the sting of betrayal settled deep. A hush had fallen over the office. People stole glances at her from their desks, whispering among themselves. Some looked sympathetic, others uncomfortable. No one spoke. No one protested. Even though she had helped, the ones who had leaned on her for guidance remained silent. She could see the guilt in their eyes, the fear that if they said the wrong thing, they might be next. Kira's fingers tightened around the edge of the box. She could break down now, let the weight of it all crush her. But she refused. Instead, she straightened her back and exhaled slowly, channeling her emotions into a quiet, burning determination. If they thought she would crumble, they were wrong. If they believed she had nowhere else to go, they were mistaken. She picked up her box, stepping away from the desk that had been her second home for 25 years. The chair creaked as it rolled back slightly, empty now, abandoned just as she had been. With steady steps, she walked toward the exit, leaving behind not just a job, but the years of silent sacrifices that had gone unnoticed. They had cast her aside, but soon, they would realize their mistake in ways they never imagined. Kira sat in her small apartment, the cardboard box from her office still unopened in the corner. The past few days had been a whirlwind of emotions, but self-pity had no place in her mind. She had given 25 years to that company, and what had it given her in return? A cold farewell and silence from those she had supported. But she wasn't broken. If anything, she was more determined than ever. She picked up her phone, scrolling through old contacts, clients she had worked with, employees she had mentored. She hesitated for a moment, then made the first call. "Hi, Daniel. It's Kira." There was surprise on the other end, followed by a frustrated sigh. "Kira, you won't believe what a mess things have been since you left. Everything's late, no one has answers, and Emma is impossible to deal with." A small smile played on Kira's lips. She had expected this. She asked a few more questions, listened carefully, then moved on to the next call. Every conversation painted the same picture: clients were frustrated, employees were overwhelmed, and management was clueless about how to fix the growing problems. Kira had always been the one holding things together, the bridge between the company and its customers. Without her, cracks were beginning to show. Then came a call she hadn't expected. "Kira, it's Mark," an ex-colleague greeted her. "I heard what happened. Listen, I left a few months ago because I couldn't deal with Emma anymore. But I know people, good people, who are looking for something better. If you ever start something new, let me know." Kira's fingers tightened around her phone. Something new. The thought had been lingering in her mind, but now, it felt like more than just an idea. She had the experience, the connections, and now, a growing list of people eager for change. As the calls continued, she saw the bigger picture forming. The company had underestimated her worth. They thought she was replaceable. But they were wrong. Without her, their foundation was crumbling. And she? She was about to build something of her own. A plan was forming, and this time, it was her future she was investing in, not theirs. The cracks in the company's foundation had started to show the moment Kira walked out the door, but 3 weeks later, those cracks had turned into full-blown chaos. Orders were backed up, emails went unanswered, and frantic calls from frustrated clients flooded the office. The employees, once reliant on Kira's steady leadership, struggled to keep up. Every department was overwhelmed, buried under tasks that had always seemed to get done effortlessly before, but now, no one knew how to handle them. "Where's the updated report for the Carter account?" one manager barked across the office. "I don't know." Kira used to handle that, a junior employee stammered, scrolling frantically through files. "Has anyone responded to the Walters group?" another voice chimed in. "Emma said she'd take care of it." Well, she didn't. Emma, sitting in her glass-walled office, watched the chaos unfold with a clenched jaw. She had underestimated Kira, but she would never admit it. Instead of stepping up to fix things, she doubled down on her usual tactics, blaming employees, pushing unrealistic deadlines, and demanding more without offering solutions. Her arrogance, once a minor irritation, had now become the company's biggest liability. Meanwhile, clients were losing patience. Delays, miscommunication, and mistakes were piling up. The Walters Group, one of their biggest accounts, sent an email with a clear warning: "If this level of service continues, we will be forced to explore other options." Others weren't as patient. Calls to the CEO became more frequent, filled with complaints about missed deadlines and unfulfilled contracts. The CEO, usually detached from day-to-day operations, was beginning to panic. At a tense board meeting, he finally voiced the realization everyone had been avoiding. "We lost Kira, and now the company is falling apart." She was the one holding everything together. Emma's expression tightened, her pride refusing to let her acknowledge the truth. "We'll manage," she said stubbornly. But they weren't managing. Clients were walking away. Employees were exhausted. And in the silence that followed, the weight of Kira's absence became undeniable. What they didn't know was that Kira wasn't just sitting idly by, she was already laying the groundwork for something new. And soon, they would see just how much they had lost. 2 months after being cast aside, Kira was no longer an ex-employee, she was a business owner. Her new company had launched quietly but grew rapidly, fueled by the same clients who had once relied on her at her old job. They had seen firsthand how efficient she was, how she handled problems before they even arose. Now, they were more than happy to move their accounts to someone who truly understood their needs. Former colleagues, frustrated by the toxic environment under Emma's rule, had eagerly joined her. These were talented professionals who had been undervalued for years, and now, under Kira's leadership, they thrived. Their small but dedicated team worked with precision, delivering results faster and better than the crumbling company they had left behind. Word spread quickly. Companies looking for reliable service knew exactly where to turn. Kira's name, once just a whisper in corporate hallways, was now a respected brand. She hadn't just moved on, she had built something better. Meanwhile, at her old workplace, things were spiraling out of control. The loss of clients hit hard, bleeding the company of its biggest revenue streams. The remaining employees were drowning under impossible workloads, and the tension in the office was unbearable. Every day, another resignation letter landed on Emma's desk. Emma, who had once dismissed Kira without a second thought, now sat in crisis meetings, scrambling for solutions. "We need to win back our clients," she snapped at her team. "Offer them discounts, incentives, whatever it takes." But the clients weren't interested. "We're happy with Kira's services," one major account responded bluntly. "She understands our needs better than you ever did." Emma clenched her jaw, her nails digging into the table. She had expected Kira to disappear into irrelevance, not rise as a competitor. But now, she was forced to face the bitter truth: she had fired the one person keeping the company afloat. And now, that person was the reason it was sinking. Kira, on the other hand, was too busy expanding her business to even spare a glance at her former employer. She didn't need revenge, her success was proof enough that she had one. But soon, Emma would give her a reason to look back, one final, desperate attempt to fix the mess she had created. 3 months after Kira's unceremonious firing, the company that once dismissed her was barely holding itself together. Desks were empty as employees continued to resign, major contracts had been lost, and the financial strain was undeniable. Clients had spoken with their wallets, taking their business to Kira's growing firm, which now flourished under her leadership. Emma, once confident in her authority, now sat in a nearly deserted office, staring at spreadsheets that painted a grim picture. Revenue had plummeted, and every strategy she tried had failed. She had mocked Kira's importance, yet here she was, scrambling to fix the disaster her own arrogance had created. There was only one option left: as humiliating as it was, she had to bring Kira back. With forced humility, Emma dialed Kira's number. The phone rang once before Kira answered, her voice steady and composed. "Kira," Emma began, forcing a polite tone, "I think we may have made a mistake. Things have been difficult without you, and we'd love to have you back." Kira didn't answer right away, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make Emma uncomfortable. Finally, she said, "You fired me without hesitation, Emma. What's changed?" Emma exhaled sharply. "We're willing to offer you a much higher salary, full benefits, and a leadership position. You'll have more authority this time." Kira let out a soft laugh, one that wasn't amused but satisfied. "You think this is about money?" she asked. "Emma, I built something better. I don't need your offer." Emma's patience was thinning. "Kira, be reasonable. You are a good employee, and we need you." Kira's voice remained calm, but her words cut deep. "I already vacated my workplace. Now, you should vacate yours." The finality in her tone made Emma's stomach drop. There was nothing left to say. As the call ended, Emma slumped in her chair, staring at the screen as if willing a different outcome. But there was none. Kira had moved on, leaving Emma to watch as everything she had controlled slipped through her fingers. And as Kira stepped into her own bustling office, greeted by a team that valued her, she knew this was the real victory. Not revenge, but success that spoke for itself. The final blow came swiftly. Kira had spent months building her company, strengthening relationships, and proving her worth to clients who once belonged to her old employer. Now, she had the opportunity to secure the biggest deal of them all, the contract that had once been the backbone of her former company's success. The deal had been on shaky ground ever since Kira left. The client, a multi-million-dollar corporation, had grown frustrated with the declining service at Emma's company. Delays, mismanagement, and lack of leadership had made them question their loyalty. When Kira presented her proposal, they didn't hesitate. "We've worked with you for years," the CEO of the corporation told her. "You've always delivered results. We trust you." The contract was signed. And just like that, Emma's last hope was gone. News spread quickly: Kira had officially overtaken her former employer, snatching their most valuable contract. The company, already bleeding from the loss of clients and talent, was now beyond saving. Within weeks, it became clear that bankruptcy was their only option. The announcement was made public. Employees who had remained loyal to Emma were left jobless, investors pulled out, and the company that had once thrived was now nothing more than a cautionary tale. Reporters covered the downfall, and whispers of Emma's failure filled the corporate world. For the first time, Emma had to face the reality she had refused to acknowledge: she had destroyed her own empire. And the woman she had once dismissed so easily was now the one standing at the top. But Kira didn't gloat. She didn't need to. Her success was her response. That evening, she sat with her new team, celebrating their victory, not just over a failing company, but over the struggles they had endured together. Glasses clinked, laughter filled the air, and for the first time in years, Kira felt truly free. She had been cast aside as if she were nothing. But now, she was stronger than ever. Emma had once expected Kira to walk away in shame. Instead, it was Emma who had been left with nothing. And Kira? She had built something greater than she ever imagined. As Kira stood in her thriving office, watching her team work with passion and dedication, she realized that losing her job had been the best thing that ever happened to her. At the time, it had felt like betrayal, a cruel dismissal after 25 years of loyalty. But in reality, it had been a blessing in disguise. If Emma hadn't fired her, she would have remained stuck in a place where she was undervalued and unappreciated. Instead, she had built something better, something truly her own. She had learned a powerful lesson: loyalty should only be given to those who deserve it. Meanwhile, Emma had faded into irrelevance. Her name was now associated with failure, her arrogance leading to her own downfall. Kira, on the other hand, had risen from the ashes, proving that resilience and self-worth were the greatest weapons of all. As she stepped into her office, greeted by a team that respected her, she smiled. She had won, not through revenge, but through success. And that was the best victory of all.